I've been breeding reptiles as a business for 6 years now, and these are some of the mistakes that almost cost me that business. If this is a dream of yours too, working full-time with reptiles, definitely don't do these. Exactly are those things? You're gonna have to stick around to find out. Stick around while we talk about some of my biggest failures when it came to a reptile business and what you can do differently to make yours way more successful. Let's get into it. Kicking it off, let's go with number 1, not doing something you are completely passionate about. When I started Dakota Blue Exotics back in 2019, I started with these little dudes right here, crested geckos. And now don't get me wrong, I love the crested gecko. I think they're an awesome little species. They're rad little dudes, and it wasn't the fact that like I didn't care about crested geckos and I was only in it to make the big cresty money. Like that ever existed. But the point of the matter is I wasn't super passionate about the crested geckos, especially as I learned as I continued this journey. The big problem starts to become is when you start breeding reptiles, especially when you're trying to build a business and go full-time into it, you're gonna have a lot of that animal. And I mean a lot. There was a point in time where we had hundreds of crested geckos available, whether that be stuff I was holding back to breed, breeders, the babies we were selling, so on and so forth. We had a lot of these species. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, the crested gecko is cool, man, but like, Jesus Christ, do I want to be owning and working with hundreds of crested geckos? No, not really. This is going to be one of those issues that you don't really know that it's going to happen until it's a little bit too late, I guess. I really didn't realize how much of a not passionate I was about crested geckos until I really started getting into tokays about a year to 2 later than that. It was that point where it started becoming prevalent as like, I much prefer working with the tokay geckos, owning the tokays, and I would much rather have 100 tokays running around than 100 crested geckos. Started creating a bit of a dilemma. I was working with crested geckos for a little bit now. I was breeding as a hobby for a little bit before I started Dakota Blue Exotics, and we were kind of known for having crested geckos. So it becomes a point where you start getting known for a specific species. You can't really just sell all that species and then start over. I mean, you could. I guess I don't think it would be a very smart move. This actually will bleed into the second point of hand. We're going to continue the cresty talk. Don't worry, it's not for the full video. But the second topic is going to be one that is the second mistake I made. Instead of downsizing the crested geckos at that point and working with more stuff that I was passionate about, I ended up doing number 2, following the money. Reptile breeding market. It is a thing. Duh. What? Reptile market is a nice shiny thing. These new morphs come out all the time and you guys are seeing these gigantic price tags. $25,000 for a snake that barely moves. But because it has 7 genes, it is worth so much money. People are making billions with the market if you just look at the morph market prices and not if those animals sell or not. Also not taking into effect in the 2 years later, that animal that was supposedly worth 25 grand is now worth like $700. But we don't look at that now. We see the high price tags and say, nah, we're gonna go all in and make that cheddar. Foreshadowing, you don't make the cheddar. This is probably one of the dumbest mistakes I ever made and probably the one that has held me back the most when it comes to my reptile breeding business. This was around the time where lily whites were huge, they're starting to come down a little bit more in value, and then all of a sudden new morphs were popping up like every 5 seconds. We had the cappuccinos, the sables, pixels, frappuccinos, exanthic lily whites, and that made the crested gecko market boom. Hey, your boy already had a handful of stuff while we were working with the majority of just super Dalmatians. That's kind of been my thing this entire time. I thought to myself, no, Dakota, no more tokays. Let's invest tens of thousands of dollars into crested geckos because we're gonna make it big and it's gonna be a good investment. Was not a good investment. At this point in time in my business, I was making a lot of content about tokay geckos because this was what I was really liking and really what I wanted to focus on. However, I just saw the price tag of what crested geckos were doing. I saw that I had crested geckos and I went for it. It didn't make much sense because this is around the time people started knowing me for my tokay geckos and breeding tokays and really did not know me for doing cresteds at all. Even to the point where even like 2 years ago when I've been 4 years into this, people are still like, oh, you breed cresteds? I was not known as the cresty guy, yet I still sunk so much money into it. However, I persevered for some dumb reason. I got the lily white, then I got the cappuccinos, and I got an empty back trio project. I got some white walls and tricolors to boost up the cappuccino fraps and lilies that we were going to be doing, all set in mind that this is going to be a great idea. Then, boys and girls, it happened. the super cappuccinos ended up having a health issue. Super Cap came out, people loved them. They were going for $7,000 to $10,000. It was crazy. Then the tiny nostrils. They weren't nostrils like these bad boys. Those things were like tiny little pinpricks with a host of different other health issues as well. It became known as a super cappuccino is not a morph you should breed. And that stopped the wheel turning. The stock market for cresteds went whoop. Probably not good at the point of this time, as this is when the economy also started getting the shit, so you have some morphs that all of a sudden come out with problems, which means everyone that invested all this money in these cappuccinos to create super cappuccinos and super morphs now are out a bunch of money. People are selling out as soon as they can. No one's working with that project anymore, and the economy is also bad. It left the cresty market in a very bad spot. Here old Dakota is invested thousands of dollars in these cresteds, grew them out or started breeding them depending on which animal I got, and what did I have to show for it? Not a profit. I will tell you that right now. Ones that were still able to sell, though, people, you know, that were known for cresteds, not a Tokay guy that still bred cresteds for some reason, they still made a little bit of money, definitely did loss, but your boy lost a lot during that time. It was a bit of a bummer, and I definitely did not get my money's back worth. At the end of the day, it is a lesson learned. It was not a complete failure, there was a silver lining, and that's the fact is, don't do it for the money, do not chase the money. That was the last time I'll ever do that, and at this point, I've actually downsized most of my cresteds, only keeping 3 trios of the best of my collection and moving on to stuff that I am strictly passionate about. Real quick, boys and girls, before we get on with the rest of this video, I just want to talk a little bit about the Patreon page. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, oh, Dakota's only made 5 failures and that's about it and we can get all the knowledge we can out of it, you would be wrong. I have made hundreds of failures. I am a failure. This isn't a good way to start advertising. The gist of what I'm getting at is there is a lot more knowledge to share about what not to do when creating a reptile business, and that's exactly what we can do over on the Patreon. Or on our Patreon account, we have a little Discord-like chat group where members can message with each other and I interact with as well, talking about various different species and things. 2 of those chapters are going to be, number 1, social media for reptile content, and number 2, building a reptile business. If this is something you would like to do, have old Dakota as a little mentor, help guide you on the way from starting your business to be where I am at today without making all of those silly mistakes, then head on over down to the link I have down in the description. Check it out. It's a fun place to be, great community. I appreciate all the support. It helps us do everything we're doing over here. Thank you guys for listening to me for 1 minute and 5 seconds. Let's get back into the video. Whoosh. While I say you guys should get stuff that you are strictly passionate about, right? Only stuff that really comes to your hearts. Do stuff you like. Don't do stuff, don't follow the money, anything like that. You can take it a little bit too far. That's exactly the mistake that I made at the very beginning of this. And that's going to be number 3, doing too much too fast. To the point that I did in the very beginning that really did bite me in the butt, and I think this was the biggest thing that did almost cost me this business and having to really downsize everything and go back to doing a 9 to 5. I started making some money breeding some reptiles, and I started getting the YouTube going, making YouTube cash as well, and this is a point where I was pretty much full-time into it, only working a job 1 day a week. Got pretty excited. I was making moolah. I wanted to make some good YouTube videos and breed some really cool species, and so I did. I got some crocodile skinks, then I got some Mexican black king snakes, then I got really big, I got a bunch of corn snakes, then I got tegu lizards, and I got Argus monitors, I got this and that and this, and what happened? What happened was I only had experience with breeding crested geckos for a little bit. I really did not have that much breeding experience when it came to harder to breed stuff. I didn't have a solid grasp of understanding of room cycling, the husbandry of the animals, what time these things are breeding, and I definitely did not do enough research to warrant having like 17 different breeding projects. So what happened? My overhead went up, up, up. It literally went through the fucking roof. I had so much overhead. I was spending so much money, especially feeding these giant monitor lizards and tegus, and I was getting nothing out of them. No eggs are being produced. I think at one point I produced like 2 Argus monitor eggs. The male ate one, but luckily I was able to grab another one, and it failed in incubation, unfortunately. I'm not saying you only have to work with one species, right? You have to just pick your favorite one and exclusively breed that. No, you could do what I was doing if you work yourself up to it and do the proper research and knowledge that goes into it. I definitely was not doing that back then. To be fair, I was like, I don't know, 22 or something. It wasn't probably the best interest. What I am saying is you should pick a certain, we'll call it genre, a reptile group. These are gonna be species that link up really well in the breeding cycle, what time of year that they breed, the conditions that they are in. You know, you don't want to have like a bunch of tropical animals and then start doing like a bunch of desert projects as well, because it's gonna be very difficult for your room. Real key thing to be able to have a successful breeding project is having your room cycled to what the animals need, right? So if it's a cooling cycle, your room is able to cool to the point where all the reptiles need it. If you're working with a specific reptile group where that room cooling needs to be at 65 or something like that, something that just chills a little bit for a little bit and then rises back up for them to get into that breeding mood. Being able to link your entire room with the ambient humidity needs and the ambient temperature needs is going to make your life a hell of a lot easier, and it's going to be better for all your projects. You'll have much better success than if you're working with stuff that breeds in November, where this stuff breeds in March and spring, that stuff over there breeds in summer, so on and so forth. Trust me, it's much better to just link everything into a group setting depending on its breeding and husbandry needs. For time in my later years of doing this, it has made my life a hell of a lot easier when it's time to collect eggs, when it's time to see what the breeding motions are going, when to start up the extra misting, extra heating, everything that goes into that. And it wasn't until very, very recently, last year, where I started expanding onto stuff that really doesn't fit the group mentality that I mentioned just 5 seconds ago. If you like arid stuff, do arid stuff. Keep high heat in your room and low humidity. You like tropical stuff? Do tropical stuff. Have a humidifier going, and you won't really need to do much heating. You'll just have to heat enclosures depending on what species you're working with, but save yourself the headache that I did for about a year, and don't try to do everything all at once. Going on to the final topic, one that I personally think is the most important, especially in this day and age, and one I wish I did a hell of a lot sooner, and that is going to be getting on social media as soon as possible. Personally, I was breeding crested geckos a couple years before. The timeline's getting messed up now. I've been doing this for like 10 plus years, but I was definitely doing it for a couple of years before I started Dakota Blue Exotics and before I got Dakota Blue Exotics onto the Facebook, Instagram, all that other stuff. And in this day and age, boys and girls, this is the 21st century. We are talking 2025 now. There is no reason why you should not be on social media. Not the old head. You're not 70 years old that doesn't understand how computers work. I don't know how computers work either. Am I old? Gotta get your stuff on social media. It's something I wish I did a hell of a lot sooner, because you can only build yourself up unless you get canceled. That's tip number 6, don't get canceled. Even if you're going through the proper steps, getting some babies to grow out until they are full adults to then breed, you're not gonna be breeding for like 1 to 2 years, that doesn't matter, brother. Start taking pictures and posting them on Facebook now. Get your audience excited. Collect a small community of people that are stoked to see these animals reproduce. And by the time those 1 to 2 years pass and you have successful eggs, you can document the eggs hatching, the babies growing, and then you have babies for sale, you already have yourself a small audience that has been watching you since the very beginning. Social media is one of those things where you can put in as much effort as you want to, but I still think just you should be on it. It could be something as simply as like taking, grabbing your cell phone out and going click picture, post, not even hashtags, whatever. You'll still get a community. Granted, it might be like 70 people, but 70 people already know who you are, and that is fantastic. It's better than 0, that's all I'm saying. Reptile market has changed, and depending on the species you are breeding, you are going to be up against a wave of people. There is only so many people that want so many geckos, so many ball pythons, so many etc. You gotta find a way to break yourself out there and stand out from the giant sea that is the crowd. Social media is a great way to do that. You could also do it like me and actually work social media and then make it your full-time job. You could be talking to a camera right now, 5 days a week, spending 10 hours a day editing on your computer for YouTube videos. How exciting does that sound? You want to be known in the hobby as the cringe YouTube guy that nobody likes and has bad geckos, or you just want to be the guy posting pictures and once a day and just calling it a day. The choice is yours, but I do strongly recommend, if you are looking to build yourself a business in this community, get on social media. You got it, boys and girls. Follow those tips and you won't be you'll be a smaller failure than your boy Dakota over here. And doesn't that just sound like a great thing? If you guys want to check out some more of our videos, we got a cool playlist right here of something, and then a video right there that is also something. As always, thank you so much for taking the time of your day to follow us over here at Dakota Blue Exotics. I will see you guys next time, but until then, goodbye.